This is lesson 40, part 4, solve equations using proportions. Go ahead and get your notes ready and push play when you're ready to begin. So we've been working on adding, subtracting, multiplying with equations and solving equation solving for x. And we know that we do the inverse property or opposite of those items to get x by itself. The problem with using that idea on division is that it really kind of depends. If your variable is at the top of the division sign, then you would do the opposite and multiply. If it's at the bottom, you would be actually dividing. And I felt like that was a really confusing thing to memorize and remember for my students. So I think that using proportions, it's the same every time, and it makes sense. So you just fill in gaps, and if you know how to use the proportions, you can use them as a tool actually for a lot of things. And we will be getting into heavy use of proportions as the year progresses, because in 6th grade that's a heavy standard. So today we get an introduction into how we can use proportions to our advantage. And once we get a look at that, then these types of things we can solve with no problems. So in this lesson, we'll go ahead and do a brief introduction to proportions, which is a way for us to prove equalness in fractions. And I do want you to copy this into your notes so you have it. So if I had a statement that said 1/2 is equal to 2/4, I can prove that those are equal to each other, or disprove that they're equal to each other if they're not, by using proportions. Now, some of you might recognize right away by looking at it, if I reduce this, I'd get that. So they're the same. We can draw pictures to show that they are in fact the same. We'll do that now, actually. If I drew a pizza and split it into 2 pieces, because that denominator says 2, and ate one of those pieces because the numerator says 1, it would look the same as if I cut this pizza into 4 pieces, because the denominator says 4, and I ate 2 of those 4 pieces. And so you're looking at the same amount of pizza here as you are here. These are equivalent fractions. But we can prove, and that's easy with small numbers, but even if they were bigger numbers, we could still use proportions. Let me show you how it works. We can prove that this is in fact equal to this, because all equivalent fractions, if you multiply their crosses with each other, they will get the same product, the same answer. Let me show you. If I multiply 2 times 2, I get 4. If I multiply 1 times 4, I get 4. And 4 does equal 4. So if those cross products are equal, your fractions are equivalent. So if cross products, make sure you write this down in your notes, are equal, your fractions are equivalent, meaning it's the same amount of pizza for you as for me. Let's try that on these 2 fractions. Let's see if 1/3 equals 5/6, and let's use proportions to find out. I'll multiply the cross products. 3 times 5 is equal to 15. And then over here, 1 times 6 is equal to 6. Well, 6 is not equal to 15. So 1/3 is not equal to 5/6. So I'd put a line through there. And we can show that in picture form. This fraction would be cut into 3 pieces because the denominators are 3, and we would eat 1 of those 3 pieces. This pizza would be cut into 6 equal pieces, and we would eat 5 of those. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you can visually see that 1/3 is not the same as 5/6. That's a whole different amount of pizza. So these ones are not equivalent. And we can prove it by using those cross products. All right, so how does that help me with my equations that we've been working on. Let's watch how that helps us then. If I have x divided by 3 equals 5, I'm going to use proportions to figure out what goes there. First of all, I'm going to change this number into a fraction because I need to compare fractions to fractions using proportions. And how do I change a whole number into a fraction? Well, there's only one number that can divide into a number and keep them the same. I guess you could call that the identity property of division. I don't know if there's such a thing, but if I divide 1 into any number, that number is going to stay the same. So if I divide 1 into 5, it's still 5. So I change it to a fraction by putting a 1 under it. And then I go ahead and use what I know about proportions. I multiply my cross products. I'm going to do 3 times 5, which is 15. And 1 times x, identity property of multiplication, right, is just x. So my answer is 15. Yeah, you can't believe it's that easy, can you? It is. All right, let's look at the other example we showed. And let's do 15 divided by x equals 3. And here's where I was saying, sometimes the x is on top of the division bar, and sometimes it's on bottom of the division bar, and depending on where it's at, if you didn't know proportions, you'd have to memorize, what do I do, multiply or divide, and in this case, multiply. Well, if you're using proportions, it doesn't matter. It will walk you right through it. It'll guide you to doing the math you need to do. So watch what I mean by that. Again, I'm going to change this to a fraction. So 3 over 1 is the same as 3. And then I'm going to multiply my cross products for my proportion. I'm going to do 15 times 1, which is 15, and 3 times x, which is 3x. And then I'm not done. Now I just dig into the toolbox in my brain, think about how I solved for x in the last lesson we did. Here is my ocean, here is my variable. Multiply is happening, so I'm going to divide. And x equals 5. You see, so I didn't have to remember, well, should I multiply or should I divide? As soon as I multiplied my cross products out, it gave me this equation, and my brain knows what to do with that. So I just do it. All right, so let's do a couple of we-dos, and we're going to put these steps down in your notes as we go, so you have them when you get to your homework tonight. Step 1, change to fraction. So we're going to change, we already have this as a fraction. We're going to change 9 to 9 over 1, which makes that a fraction. Okay? Then step 2, we will multiply the crosses. So we'll take 5 times 9, and it doesn't matter what order you do it in. If I did x times 1 and put it over here on this side, it would come out the same. So it won't matter which side of the equal sign you're doing that on. So we had 5 times 9 is 45. And we have x times 1, which is identity property of multiplication, says it's x. And so my answer is x equals 45, or 45 equals x. Same thing. The third step in the whole thing is to get x alone. But in our case, for this particular problem, x already is alone. So we're done on that one. Let's do another we-do. We have 18 divided by x equals 3. And one thing I want to add in here, if any problem is written out this way, any equation is written out this way, rewrite it to look like that. This is 18 divided by x, this is 18 divided by x. So rewrite it to look like this so that you can use proportions, and then you don't have to worry, oh wait, am I multiplying or dividing? I can't remember. The proportions will tell us. So let's let it lead us through. Step 1 was to change it to a fraction, change everything to a fraction. So now I have 2 fractions, and I can use what I know about proportions. Step 2 is to multiply those crosses. I have 3 times x, which is just going to be 3x. nice and easy. And 18 times 1, which is going to be 18, nice and easy. So step 2, multiply the crosses, is done. Step 3, the final step, is get x alone. So here is my ocean, here is my variable. 3 is hanging out with my variable. That's who I want gone. Divide him away. Do the same to both sides to keep those scales balanced. 3 goes into 18 6 times. Your answer is 6. Let's try a couple of you-dos. You're probably starting to get the hang of it, although you might make some errors as you go along. This is the time to make those errors, though. It's okay to make those mistakes. It's not okay not to try, though. So give it a try, and let's see how you do. Push pause, try this one. When you have an answer, push play again. All right, you have some sort of an answer, hopefully. And so let's see how you did. I'm just going to go through those 3 steps. Change everything to a fraction. Now it is. Step 2, multiply those crosses. 6 times 3 is 18, and x times 1 is x. And step 3, get x alone. It already is, so x equals 18. You can check it. 18 divided by 6 is 3, so that would be correct. And let's try another one. 20 divided by x equals 5. Go ahead and pause the video, push play when you have an answer. All right, let's see how you did. So you have 20 divided by x equals 5. Step 1, change it to a fraction. There, it's done. Step 2, multiply the crosses. 5 times x is going to be 5x. And 20 times 1 is going to be 20. And the final step, get x alone. All right, that's not a problem because I learned to do that in the previous lesson and it was easy. Here's my ocean, here's my variable. I need to get 5 away from there, so I divide 5 away, divide 5 away, and that leaves me with x equals 4. 5 goes into 24 times. My answer is 4. You can check that by coming back up here, taking x up, and if I plugged in 4 there, 4 divides into 20 5 times. So yes, that is correct. All right, and that's all I have to show you. So if you feel like you understand this pretty well, go ahead and get the closure questions. If you need to, rewind to where you need to and hear it again, or you can come to me for me to explain it a little bit further.